An unexpected invitation. As the bright twin suns of the planet Taria set in a blaze of orange and gold, engineer Kai Legrand wiped the sweat from his brow. He'd spent the entire day under the sun's relentless heat, tuning the atmospheric regulators to ensure Taria's human colony was protected from the planet's extreme weather. To most, the scorching desert-like environment was a constant test of endurance, but Kai felt a strange kind of pride in his work. Each adjustment, each repair, was like bringing a piece of Earth's stability to this strange, harsh world. This evening, however, was meant to be a break from the usual. Kai had made tentative plans to relax and unwind with a rare bottle of whiskey he kept for special occasions. The days on Taria were long, filled with technical problems and challenges that only an experienced engineer could solve, so moments of quiet reprieve were few and far between. Yet, just as he was packing up his toolkit, he noticed a familiar figure approaching him with graceful, unhurried steps. The figure belonged to Sailor, an envoy from the serene, mystic race known as the Zithrians. As a diplomat, Sailor was revered for her calm and wisdom, her silver eyes holding a depth that many in the colony found mesmerizing. While Kai and Sailor's interactions had mostly been professional, there was always an air of curiosity between them, a quiet understanding that humans and Zithrians were alike in more ways than they appeared. Sailor greeted him with a slight bow, her voice soft yet carrying a certain musical quality. "Kai," she began, her tone as gentle as the desert breeze, "I wish to speak with you about a matter of significance." Kai blinked, mildly surprised by her formality. "Ah, sure, Sailor. What's on your mind?" "I would like to accept the invitation you extended earlier," she replied, her expression serene, but her eyes glimmering with something he couldn't quite place. Invitation. Kai's mind scrambled to recall what he might have said, but nothing came to him. He hadn't invited her anywhere except... Wait, there was that mention of whiskey, a half-joking offer to share a drink sometime. But that was casual, right? Just a friendly offer, he thought. "You mean for a drink?" he asked, laughing awkwardly. "I was just going to unwind with a bottle back in my quarters. Nothing formal." Sailor nodded, her gaze steady and unwavering. "Yes, I understand. I will join you this evening, then." Kai felt a small pang of unease. The way she accepted the invitation felt oddly formal, almost ceremonial, as if she were attending a significant event rather than a casual evening with a friend. But he brushed off the feeling, figuring it was just the Zithrians' unique way of interacting. Later that evening, Kai tidied his quarters, making sure his workspace was free from scattered tools and half-done projects. There was a subtle excitement mingled with nervousness. This was the first time he'd invited Sailor into his personal space. When she finally arrived, Kai was taken aback. She wore a simple, elegant outfit, a soft robe made of woven threads that seemed to shimmer under the dim lighting. Her usually braided silver hair fell loosely over her shoulders, giving her an uncharacteristic, almost vulnerable appearance. "You look different," Kai said, trying to keep his tone light. "In a good way." Sailor offered a faint smile. "It is customary in my culture to dress simply when preparing for a significant journey." Kai chuckled, still not fully grasping her words. "Well, it's just a drink, so don't fear you have to." "Of course," she interrupted, the hint of amusement in her eyes contrasting with the solemnity of her tone. Kai poured them both a glass of whiskey, and they began to talk. Their conversation meandered from their work on the colony to the challenges of adapting to Taria's strange ecosystem. But the more they spoke, the more Kai noticed Sailor's intense focus on him, her silvery gaze never breaking contact. It felt as if she was studying him, capturing every nuance of his voice and movements. Finally, after a quiet moment, she looked at him with an expression of calm determination. "I am honored to share this union with you, Kai," she said, her voice filled with sincerity. Kai froze, the glass halfway to his lips. "Union," he repeated, confusion sharpening his tone. "What do you mean?" Sailor blinked, surprise flickering across her face. Is this not a ritual of commitment among your people? You invited me into your private quarters and shared this moment. It signifies a bond, a lifelong partnership, as is the custom of my people." Her words hit Kai like a sandstorm. He carefully set his glass down, a mix of disbelief and panic bubbling within him. "Wait, are you saying you think this is a marriage proposal?" Sayla tilted her head, studying him with an intensity that made his heart race. In Zithrian culture, when one extends an invitation to share a private, significant moment, it is understood as a proposal of union. I accepted, and in doing so, I agreed to a bond between us. Kay's stomach sank as he tried to process the misunderstanding. No, this is just a drink. It's casual, between friends. I had no idea this was something so serious for you." Sayla's face remained composed, but her shoulders slumped ever so slightly. "I see," she murmured, her gaze dropping to her glass. "It seems I have misunderstood. In my culture, such misunderstandings can have lasting consequences." Kay's heart sank. Consequences? Like what? She sighed, her voice barely a whisper. "The Zithrians will expect us to honor this union. If we do not, it will bring shame upon my family. In some cases, failing to uphold a union could lead to discord, even conflict." The enormity of what she was saying settled over him like a dark cloud. His mind raced through the implications. He'd come here for a new start, to escape the entanglements of Earth, not to find himself in a cultural misstep that could spark tensions. "What should we do?" he asked quietly, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing on him. "For now, we must maintain the appearance of this bond," Sayla replied, her tone resolute. "The Zithrians will be watching us closely, and if we part ways too soon, it will be seen as dishonor." Kai swallowed, forcing himself to nod. "All right, I didn't mean to disrespect your customs, and I don't want to cause trouble. So for now, we keep up appearances." Sayla looked at him, her expression softened by a small, almost appreciative smile. "Thank you, Kai. I believe, with patience, we can find a way to resolve this without harm." As they continued to sit in silence, the reality of their charade began to settle in. They were now bound, not by love or choice, but by a simple misunderstanding that had spiraled into something neither had anticipated. Kai could only hope that their alliance, forged by accident, wouldn't be the spark that set the delicate balance of the colony's peace ablaze. A diplomatic bond. The morning sun of Taria rose over the settlement, casting a warm, amber glow across the colony. Engineer Kai Legrand stirred, still groggy from the previous night's bewildering conversation with Sayla. As he sat on the edge of his bed, he tried to make sense of the bizarre situation he now found himself in. Somehow, a simple invitation for a drink had turned into an interspecies engagement, bound by Zithrian custom. He hadn't meant to offend or complicate things, but here he was, linked to Sayla in a way he hadn't intended. In his line of work, Kai was used to dealing with technical issues, not diplomatic crises. The intricacies of alien traditions were well beyond his expertise. Yet, it was clear the situation required more than just mechanical fixes. It needed tact, patience, and perhaps a measure of trust he wasn't sure he could fully give. Sighing, Kai dressed for the day, steeling himself for whatever might come next. As he stepped outside, he immediately noticed a shift in the colony's atmosphere. The usual buzz of morning activity was peppered with side glances and hushed whispers. Zithrians who had once greeted him with polite nods now watched him with renewed interest. It seemed word had already spread about his unexpected bonding with Sayla. Lost in thought, Kai made his way to the workshop, where a few of his fellow engineers were already at work. Among them was Lian, a technician with an irreverent sense of humor and a knack for teasing Kai over anything remotely interesting. "Well, if it isn't the groom himself," Lian said with a broad grin, leaning against her workstation. "So, when's the wedding reception?" Kai rolled his eyes, but inside, a knot of tension tightened. "Very funny, Lian. It's a misunderstanding. The Zithrians, they have different customs, and I didn't exactly know what I was getting into." Liam snorted, crossing her arms. Apparently, a lot more than a drink. You really don't know what you signed up for, do you? Kai shot her a glare. I'm aware. But look, it's a delicate situation, and I don't want to make things worse. So let's just drop it. Despite the jesting, Kai knew his situation was no joke. Sailor's people were known for their strict adherence to tradition, and any breach of such a bond could bring diplomatic consequences. His casual invitation had inadvertently set off a chain of events that now felt impossible to stop. He had to handle it carefully, or risk damaging the fragile peace between humans and Zithrians in the colony. Later that afternoon, Kay's work was interrupted by a message summoning him to the council hall. The formal tone of the message left little room for misinterpretation. The Zithrian elders wanted to see him. Kai's stomach churned as he realized that this was likely related to his bond with Sailor. He made his way to the council chamber, his mind spinning with possible scenarios and rehearsed explanations. But when he arrived, he found Sailor waiting for him, standing near the entrance with a calm yet resolute expression. Kai, she greeted him, her tone formal. The elders wish to speak with us about our union. He took a deep breath, his pulse quickening. So they know. Sailor nodded, glancing around to ensure no one else was within earshot. Yes, and they are pleased. Our bond has brought a sense of unity that many of my people admire. They see it as a sign that our two races can coexist in harmony. Kay's mind reeled. But this wasn't. It wasn't supposed to happen. Surely he'd understand if we explained it was a misunderstanding. Sailor hesitated, her eyes somber. In Zithrian culture, there are few concepts as sacred as a bond. If we were to break it now, it could be seen as dishonor, and that would reflect poorly not just on me, but on my entire family. The elders might take it as a sign of disrespect toward our ways. Kai looked at her, a mixture of sympathy and frustration twisting in his chest. She, too, was caught in this web, as much a victim of circumstance as he was. They were both bound by an accidental pact that neither wanted nor intended. "All right," he said finally, exhaling slowly. "So what do they want from us?" Sailor's expression softened. For now, they simply wish to acknowledge our bond. They want us to take part in a formal ceremony as a symbol of unity. Afterward, we can work on finding a solution that preserves both of our people's honor. Kai felt a pang of dread at the thought of standing before the elders and the entire colony, pretending to be something he wasn't. But he also realized that Sailor had no more control over this than he did. If they were going to get out of this without offending the Zithrians or creating a scandal, they had to work together. "All right," he replied, nodding with resignation. "Let's do this. Just tell me what I need to do." The bonding ceremony. The council hall was filled with an air of solemnity as Kai and Sailor stepped inside. The architecture was beautiful yet intimidating, adorned with intricate tapestries that told the ancient stories of the Zithrian people. Rows of Zithrian elders, each wearing ceremonial robes that shimmered with woven silver threads, stood at attention, their expressions both serene and expectant. As they reached the center of the hall, Kai felt the weight of 100 gazes upon him. The elders sat in a semicircle, their wise faces framed by the ethereal glow of Taria's light streaming through stained glass. The head elder, a tall Zithrian with striking silver eyes, raised his hand, silencing the murmur of the crowd. "We are gathered here to witness the union of our cherished diplomat, Sailor, and Kai Legrand, a trusted engineer among our human allies," he intoned, his voice reverberating through the chamber. Kay's heart pounded in his chest, every word echoing the reality of his situation. He hadn't prepared for this, hadn't thought through the implications of pretending to be bonded to Sailor in front of her people. Yet, as he glanced at her, he saw a quiet determination in her gaze, a resolve to see this through, to preserve the honor of her family and her culture. Following the elder's guidance, Sailor stepped forward and recited the first part of the Zithrian vow, her voice calm and measured. Although the words were foreign to him, Kai could sense their gravity, the depth of emotion and tradition they carried. When it was his turn, Sailor handed him a small tablet with the human translation of the vow. Kai took a deep breath, his voice trembling slightly as he began to read. I, Kai, pledge to honor this union with respect and understanding, to stand beside you in all matters as tradition dictates. He could feel the intensity of Sailor's gaze as he spoke, her expression soft yet unreadable. After the vows, Sailor presented him with a ceremonial bracelet, its delicate silver chain adorned with a small, glowing stone that radiated a faint warmth. This is my gift to you, a symbol of our bond, she said, her voice barely above a whisper as she clasped it around his wrist. In turn, Kai fumbled with the only thing he had that might hold meaning. A simple battered bracelet that he had worn since his days in engineering school. It wasn't much, but it was personal, a token of his journey. He handed it to Sailor, feeling oddly vulnerable as she accepted it with a small bow of gratitude. With the exchange complete, the head elder raised his hand again, and a murmur of approval swept through the crowd. To the Zithrians, this was more than just a ritual. It was a moment of unity, a rare and cherished bond between two different species. As the ceremony concluded, Sailor and Kai exited the hall together, their steps in sync, yet weighed down by the shared knowledge of their predicament. For the colony, this union was a beacon of hope, a symbol of interspecies harmony. But for them, it was a delicate charade, one that they would need to uphold with care. Outside the hall, Sailor paused, her serene mask finally slipping as she let out a sigh. Thank you, Kai. I know this wasn't what you intended, but you handled it well. Kai nodded, managing a faint smile. Guess we make a pretty good team, huh? Even if it's under unusual circumstances. Sailor's lips curved in a small, almost amused smile. Indeed. Let us hope our efforts can lead to a peaceful resolution without damaging either of our people's honor. As they parted ways for the evening, Kai felt a strange sense of anticipation mixed with trepidation. His life on Taria had taken an unexpected turn, one that had bound him to a world and a culture he was only beginning to understand. And as much as he yearned to find a way out of this accidental union, a part of him couldn't help but be curious about what lay ahead. For now, he was no longer just an engineer in a distant colony. He was a symbol, a reluctant ambassador between two worlds, walking a thin line between tradition and diplomacy. The road to freedom was unclear, but he knew one thing. With Sailor by his side, this journey would be anything but ordinary. Navigating the new reality. The days that followed the bonding ceremony were a whirlwind for Kai. Life in the Terrian colony continued as usual, yet Kai noticed subtle changes in how people treated him. The Zithrians, in particular, now regarded him with a new level of respect, sometimes even deference. They would greet him with slight bows or nods, gestures that felt both foreign and reverent. For the humans in the colony, there was a mix of curiosity and humor, especially among his engineering colleagues. But no one fully understood the weight of the situation, the cultural stakes that bound him to Sailor in ways deeper than appearances. Kai did his best to act normal, focusing on his work, but the sense of being watched never left him. The elders were keenly observant, ensuring that his actions aligned with the expectations of a bonded Zithrian couple. He spent time studying Zithrian customs in secret, memorizing small gestures, formal greetings, and the meanings of their expressions. He didn't want to make a misstep, not only for his own sake, but for Sailor's as well. One evening, as Kai finished adjusting one of the atmospheric regulators in a remote part of the colony, he saw Sailor approaching from a distance. She was dressed in her formal diplomat's robes, and her silver hair gleamed under the soft light of Taria's twin moons. She greeted him with a slight nod, her expression calm, but with a hint of warmth that was rare for her. Kai, I hope your day has been fruitful, she began, her voice as composed as always. Kai chuckled, wiping his hands on a rag. Fruitful is one word for it. I think I've just about memorized every bolt on these regulators by now. Sailor allowed herself a small smile, and for a brief moment they stood there in silence, both feeling the weight of their situation. Finally, she spoke, her tone thoughtful. "The elders have requested that we attend a gathering tomorrow. They wish to present us to the community formally. They feel it will solidify the unity between our people." Kay's stomach twisted slightly. Another public appearance. She nodded, her expression somber. It is important to them. This union symbolizes more than just our bond. It represents a rare opportunity for our cultures to understand each other on a deeper level. The elders believe that by showing unity, we can foster greater cooperation. Kai sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I understand, but it's a lot to keep up with. Acting like I'm part of a culture I barely know. I'm trying, Sailor, but sometimes it feels like I'm walking through a maze in the dark." Sailor's gaze softened, and for the first time, Kai thought he saw a glimmer of understanding, maybe even empathy. "You are not alone in this, Kai. I, too, feel as though I am walking in unfamiliar territory. This situation is as strange to me as it is to you. But if we walk together, perhaps we can find our way." Her words brought a strange sense of comfort, and Kai found himself nodding. Despite the complexities, he realized that he trusted Sailor. She was as much a part of this accidental journey as he was, and together, they might just be able to navigate the labyrinth of tradition and expectation. The gathering. The next evening, Kai stood beside Sailor at the grand gathering hall, feeling more like an actor than an engineer. The hall was decorated with tapestries depicting Zithrian myths and histories, woven with threads that shimmered in colors he couldn't quite name. The air was filled with the soft murmur of conversations in the Zithrian tongue, mingling with the faint hum of alien instruments playing a tune that was both haunting and beautiful. As they stepped into the center of the hall, the crowd parted, forming a circle around them. The head elder, a figure Kai was beginning to recognize as the chief voice of authority, raised his hands, signaling for silence. "We gather here tonight," the elder intoned, his voice carrying over the assembly, "to honor the bond between our diplomat, Sailor, and her human partner, Kai Legrand. In this union, we see the promise of understanding, a blending of worlds that were once distant." The crowd murmured in approval, and Kai felt a strange mix of pride and anxiety. His heart thudded as he realized the magnitude of the role he was playing, not just as an engineer or Sailor's accidental partner, but as a symbol of unity between two species. As part of the ceremony, Sailor stepped forward and presented him with a small, intricately carved wooden box. She opened it, revealing a delicate piece of jewelry, a Zithrian pendant made from iridescent stone. The pendant caught the light in mesmerizing patterns, as if it held within it the essence of Taria's twin moons. "This is a gift," Sailor said, her voice low but clear, "a symbol of my respect for you and the commitment we have undertaken together. It is traditional among my people to offer a token that represents harmony and balance." Kai took the pendant, feeling the smooth, cool weight of it in his hand. He hadn't prepared a gift of his own, but the Zithrian crowd didn't seem to expect one. Instead, they watched him, their faces a blend of curiosity and approval. For a moment, he felt like he belonged in this strange, beautiful culture, as if the pendant connected him not just to Sailor, but to Taria itself. When the formalities concluded, the crowd began to mingle, and Kai found himself swept into a series of conversations with Zithrian elders and diplomats. The topics ranged from his work as an engineer to questions about Earth customs, food, and music. The Zithrians were endlessly curious, their questions probing yet respectful, and Kai did his best to answer, sometimes leaning on Sailor for guidance when the nuances of their culture eluded him. Despite his initial discomfort, Kai found himself enjoying the evening. There was something refreshing about the Zithrians' earnest curiosity, their willingness to listen and learn. It was a rare experience for him, to be seen as more than just an engineer, more than just a human among aliens. At one point, as the evening drew on, Sailor guided him to a quiet corner of the hall. She looked at him with a strange expression, a mix of relief and something he couldn't quite place. "You handled yourself well tonight," she said, her voice soft. The elders are pleased, and so am I. You have shown respect to my people, and they now see you as one of their own. Kai met her gaze, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Thank you, sailor. I didn't expect to feel this connected to your people. I always thought of myself as a visitor here, just passing through. But tonight, I felt like I was part of something bigger. Sailor nodded, a subtle warmth in her eyes. That is the essence of unity, Kai. We are each a part of something larger than ourselves. In our bond, we have bridged a divide that many believed could not be crossed. As they stood there in the soft light of the hall, Kai felt a strange sense of peace, a quiet understanding that maybe, just maybe, this unexpected bond with Sailor wasn't merely a burden. It was a bridge, a chance to learn and grow in ways he hadn't anticipated. But just as he was beginning to feel comfortable, a sharp voice interrupted their moment. Kai turned to see Soren, a senior member of the Human Colony Council, approaching with a stern expression. Soren was known for his skepticism toward the Zithrians and his strict adherence to Earth protocols. Kai, Soren said, his voice tense, we need to talk. Kai stiffened, sensing the undercurrent of disapproval in Soren's tone. He glanced at Sailor, who gave him a small nod of reassurance before stepping aside. Soren led him to a quiet corner, away from the crowd. Once they were alone, he spoke in a low, urgent voice. What exactly do you think you're doing, Kai? This bonding ceremony, this relationship with Sailor, do you realize how delicate our position is here? We're here to establish a foothold, not get entangled in their customs. Kai met Soren's glare with a calm he didn't quite feel. Soren, I didn't ask for this bond. It was an accident, a misunderstanding of their customs. But I can't just ignore it. This isn't Earth. We have to respect their ways if we want to work with them. Soren's eyes narrowed. Respect their ways, yes. But this could compromise our position. You're an engineer, not a diplomat. Don't overstep your role. Kay's jaw tightened. He had grown to appreciate the Zithrians and had come to understand the importance of his bond with Sailor. To him, it was no longer just a mistake to be corrected. It was a responsibility. Look, Soren, he said, his voice steady. I know this is complicated, but I'm not going to dishonor their traditions just because it's inconvenient. The Zithrians respect us because of this bond, and that respect can only help our colony. We're building a future here, one that requires cooperation, not control. Soren looked as if he wanted to argue, but something in Kay's expression silenced him. With a frustrated sigh, he turned and walked away, leaving Kai alone in the corner. As the evening wore on and the hall began to empty, Kai found himself standing beside Sailor once again. She looked at him with a questioning gaze, having sensed the tension between him and Soren. Is everything all right? She asked softly. Kai hesitated, then nodded, just a difference in perspective. Sailor's eyes held a quiet understanding. Sometimes a path to unity is fraught with resistance, but we walk it nonetheless, trusting that the journey will bring us closer to understanding. As they left the hall together, Kai felt a renewed sense of purpose. The bond he shared with Sailor had become more than just an obligation. It was a chance to forge something meaningful, to bridge the gap between two worlds in a way he hadn't thought possible. And as he walked beside her, he realized that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, bound by respect, tradition, and perhaps even a growing sense of companionship that neither had anticipated. Testing the boundaries. In the weeks following the gathering, Kai and Sailor settled into an unusual routine. Their lives were now intertwined, a blending of personal and professional spaces that neither had anticipated nor entirely understood. By day, they worked separately, Kai in the engineering sector, where he led teams repairing and upgrading the colony's systems, and Sailor in the diplomatic quarters, addressing the delicate political needs of both humans and Zithrians. But by evening, their time was often spent together, attending events, ceremonies, and meetings, all of which now required their united presence. For Kai, this new existence was challenging but strangely fulfilling. He was beginning to see Taria through Sayla's eyes, to understand its cultural subtleties and unspoken customs, things that he'd previously overlooked as mere differences. Sayla, on the other hand, seemed to be navigating a different journey. While her serene exterior rarely faltered, Kai sensed that their bond was a matter of personal importance to her beyond just her duty. And though she never spoke of it directly, he often wondered what their union truly meant to her. As days passed, the reality of their bond and the expectations surrounding it started to settle, but one afternoon, Kai received a message that shattered any illusion of stability. He was summoned to a meeting by Soren and several senior leaders of the Human Colony Council. There was a weight to the message, an undertone of formality that made Kai's stomach twist with unease. When he arrived at the council's chambers, Soren was already seated, his expression grim. Beside him were two other council members, each looking at Kai with varying degrees of skepticism. The room was darkened, the blinds drawn against the bright Tarian suns, casting long shadows across the council table. "Kai, thank you for coming," Soren began, motioning for him to take a seat. His tone was clipped, his eyes sharp. "There are matters we need to discuss, serious concerns about your relationship with Sayla." Kai's heart sank, but he kept his expression neutral. "I figured as much. But this isn't just a relationship, Soren. It's a bond, one that's already affected the way the Zithrians see us." Soren leaned forward, his hands clasped tightly together. "Precisely. That's the issue. You may see this as a personal commitment, but as far as the colony is concerned, it's a political liability. The Council is concerned that you've become compromised. The Zithrians have long been allies, but we cannot forget that they are different from us. Their customs are not ours, and your involvement with one of their diplomats could put our interests at risk." Kai felt anger simmering just below the surface. "So you're saying that because I've respected their customs, I'm somehow compromising the colony? You do realize that this bond has actually helped build trust between us and the Zithrians, don't you?" One of the other council members, an older man named Dr. Mendes, interjected, his voice calm but firm. "We acknowledge that this bond has brought us certain diplomatic benefits, Kai, but there's a fine line between cooperation and dependency. If they come to believe that you and Sayla's union represents an alliance between our people, they could begin to leverage it in ways that go against our best interests." Soren nodded in agreement, his gaze unwavering. "Exactly. And while we've seen some positive effects, we also need to prepare for potential complications. We don't fully understand their customs, Kai. What if, one day, they ask something of you, something you cannot refuse because of this bond?" Kai took a deep breath, steadying himself. He had anticipated some resistance, but he hadn't expected the council to be this worried, or to view his connection to Sayla as a threat. "I understand your concerns," he replied carefully. "But I want you to know that I'm not blindly following their customs. This bond was unintentional, yes, but it has created a bridge of trust. It's helping us work together. Can't you see the potential that could have for both sides?" Soren's gaze didn't soften. "Potential, yes, but at what cost? We need you to set boundaries with her, Kai. If you truly believe this bond is valuable, then prove to us that it doesn't compromise your loyalty to this colony." Kai clenched his fists beneath the table. His loyalty to the colony was never in question, not to him, at least. But the implication that his commitment to Sayla somehow lessened his dedication to his own people struck a nerve. "All right," he said, his tone cold. "I'll set boundaries. But remember this, trust isn't built overnight. It requires patience, mutual respect, and understanding. Sayla and I have managed to foster that, even if it was accidental. I don't intend to betray that trust, not for her people or for ours." Soren's face was unreadable, but he inclined his head, dismissing Kai with a brief nod. As he left the room, Kai felt a storm of conflicting emotions, anger, frustration, and a simmering determination to prove that his bond with Sayla was not a weakness, but a strength. An unspoken understanding. Later that evening, Kai sought refuge in his quarters, hoping for a few moments to cool down. The conversation with the council had left him drained, questioning his place in both worlds. But before he could fully collect his thoughts, there was a soft chime at his door. He knew who it was before he opened it. Sailor stood there, her expression calm yet concerned. She entered without a word, sensing his need for companionship, and sat with him at the small table in his quarters. After a long pause, she spoke softly, her tone gentle. "You seem troubled, Kai. Is everything all right?" Kai hesitated, then let out a frustrated sigh. "The council is concerned about our bond. They think it could jeopardize the colony's interests, that I've somehow become a liability." Sailor's face softened, and for the first time, he saw a flicker of sadness in her eyes. "I see," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "I am not surprised. Bonds are a matter of trust and commitment, and for your people, it must seem foreign, even dangerous." Kai clenched his fists, trying to put his feelings into words. "They're worried I'll put your people's interests above my own, that I'll be compromised. But this bond has given us a way to communicate, to understand each other. I don't see that as a risk. I see it as an advantage." Sailor reached across the table, her hand resting gently on his. "For me, this bond is more than a cultural obligation. It is a path, a journey we take together. I have come to respect you deeply, Kai, not just as a partner in this bond, but as someone I can trust. That is not something I take lightly." Her words struck him deeply, and for a moment, he simply looked at her, trying to reconcile his own feelings. This bond had changed them both, pushing them into a space that neither had expected or fully understood. Despite the council's concerns and the potential risks, he felt a quiet, unspoken loyalty to her, a feeling that went beyond mere obligation. "Sailor," he began, his voice steady, "I want you to know that I'm committed to seeing this through. I don't know where this path will lead, but whatever challenges come our way, I'll face them with you." A faint smile played at her lips, and she nodded, the hint of relief in her eyes unmistakable. "Then we shall face them together, Kai. Our bond may be unconventional, but it is ours, and that is enough for me." The test of faith. Days turned into weeks, and Kai found himself growing closer to Sailor, their bond deepening with each passing moment. They shared stories of their pasts, fragments of their cultures, and moments of quiet companionship that required no words. Through her, Kai began to see the beauty in Zithrian customs, the intricate web of tradition that connected her people. In return, she learned about his life on Earth, his love for problem-solving, and the human drive to explore the unknown. But their bond was soon put to the test in an unexpected way. One evening, as Kai and Sailor were finishing a routine inspection of the colony's power grid, an alarm blared, echoing through the halls. Kai's communicator crackled to life with urgent voices. An energy surge had triggered a containment breach in one of the colony's core reactors. Kai's heart raced as he sprinted toward the reactor control room, Sailor close behind. When they arrived, the scene was chaotic. Technicians shouting orders, warning lights flashing, and a low, ominous hum emanating from the reactor core. It was dangerously close to a meltdown. Without hesitation, Kai rushed to the control panel, assessing the readings. He needed to stabilize the core before it reached critical levels, but the reactor's systems were overloaded, and the fail-safe mechanisms were failing. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he realized the gravity of the situation. Sailor stepped beside him, her gaze calm but focused. "What do you need me to do?" He glanced at her, his mind racing. "There's an auxiliary control panel on the far side of the reactor chamber. I'll need you to reset the cooling system manually. It's dangerous, Sailor. If anything goes wrong, the containment shield might not hold." She didn't hesitate. "I trust you, Kai. Give me the instructions and I will do what is needed." Together, they worked in tense silence, Kai guiding her through each step as she adjusted the cooling valves and reset the control systems. The temperature in the chamber rose steadily, the heat pressing down on them like a physical weight. As Sailor finished the final adjustments, Kai input the command for a controlled shutdown, holding his breath as he waited for the system to respond. After a moment that felt like an eternity, the reactor's hum softened, and the warning lights flickered off. The temperature stabilized, and a collective sigh of relief swept through the control room. Kai slumped against the console, exhausted but relieved. He turned to find Sayla standing nearby, a faint smile on her face despite the sweat glistening on her brow. Their eyes met, and in that moment, no words were needed. Their bond had been tested, and together they had overcome. As they left the reactor room, the weight of what had just happened settled over Kai. This wasn't just a partnership anymore, it was something deeper, something forged through trial and trust. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew they would face them together, united not just by duty, but by a bond that had grown into something more than either of them had anticipated: the weight of tradition. In the wake of the reactor crisis, Kai and Sayla's bond had evolved into a partnership that was undeniable, not just to themselves, but to everyone in the colony. They had proven, under the most strenuous of circumstances, that their unity brought strength, resilience, and problem-solving that was both innovative and effective. The tension between them and the Council had quieted for now, and Kai thought they might finally be able to focus on the colony's development without constant scrutiny. But in Taria's intricate web of tradition and politics, challenges were rarely so easily laid to rest. One morning, as Kai worked on a project involving upgrades to the colony's main communication array, he received an unexpected message from Sayla. It was brief, her words sparing yet urgent. "Meet me at the council chamber. The elders wish to discuss matters related to our bond." His heart skipped a beat, the calm of his morning instantly disrupted. Kai knew that any direct request from the elders carried weight, and this one had an intensity that made him uneasy. Wasting no time, he packed up his tools and made his way toward the council chamber, his mind whirling with questions and possibilities. When he arrived, Sayla stood waiting at the entrance, her expression unreadable, but her eyes holding a quiet resolve. She gave him a nod, a silent acknowledgement that whatever they were about to face, they would face together. As they entered the chamber, they found the elders gathered in a formal circle, their somber expressions and careful glances making the atmosphere even more charged. The head elder, Arthur, a figure revered among the Zithrians for his wisdom and insight, motioned for them to step forward. "Welcome, Kai Legrand and Sayla," Arthur began, his voice calm but weighted. "We have observed your union, and we are deeply pleased with the harmony it has brought. Your bond represents a unique bridge between our people and the humans, a beacon of understanding." Kai felt a faint sense of relief, believing that the elders were finally acknowledging the positive impact of their union without further expectations. But as Arthur continued, Kay's hope quickly faded. "However," Arthur said, his gaze fixed on them with piercing intensity, "the time has come for this union to be formalized. In our tradition, bonds of this nature are not merely symbols, they are responsibilities, commitments that shape the lives of both parties." Kay's pulse quickened, and he glanced at Sayla, her calm exterior betraying a glimmer of concern. He could sense that this was as unexpected for her as it was for him. Arthur continued, "A formal bonding ceremony is required, one that will seal your union in the eyes of both Zithrian and human communities. This ceremony is more than a declaration, it is an oath, a commitment to stand by each other, to represent our shared interests, and to serve as examples of unity." Kai took a slow breath, steadying himself. "Elder Arthur, we appreciate the honor you bestow upon us, but our bond was never intended to be a permanent commitment. I value our partnership, but it wasn't what we envisioned." The elder's expression remained unyielding. "Indeed, yet intention matters little in matters of fate. This bond, whether intended or not, has taken root, and it has brought forth great benefits for both our peoples. To dissolve it now would disrupt the harmony that has been so delicately woven." Beside him, Sayla finally spoke, her voice as composed as always. "Elder, I respect the traditions deeply, as does Kai. But forcing a formal union upon us, one that was formed under unintentional circumstances, may strain the very harmony we have built. Arthur's gaze softened, though his stance remained firm. You misunderstand, sailor. The bond is not a mere formal arrangement. It is a vow, one that cannot be abandoned without consequence. To sever it would dishonor our people, and it would create a rift in the trust we have worked so hard to establish with the humans. Kai felt the weight of the elder's words settle over him, pressing down with a heaviness that went beyond mere tradition. If they refused, if they tried to dissolve this bond, they risked undoing the progress they had made and compromising the alliance between humans and Zithrians. I understand, Elder, Kai said quietly, though his heart raced with conflicting thoughts. But I also believe that bonds should be entered freely, with a choice and not merely out of obligation. Is there not a way for us to honor this connection without formalizing it in a way that neither of us fully understands? Arthur was silent for a moment, his wise eyes studying both Kai and Sailor. Then he nodded slowly. Perhaps there is a way, a path that may satisfy the traditions without binding you in a manner you find burdensome. I propose that you both take part in the ritual of union's choice. Sailor's eyes widened slightly, a rare break in her composed facade. The union's choice, she echoed, her voice barely above a whisper. Arthur inclined his head. Yes, it is an ancient rite, rarely practiced. In this ritual, both parties are given a choice: to accept the union and all that it entails, or to sever it in peace. It is a ceremony that demands clarity, for it is said that the bond cannot be broken by any but those who are certain of their path. Kai glanced at Sailor, catching the glint of understanding in her gaze. This was a way out, a chance to honor their connection while retaining their autonomy. The ritual would allow them to decide their future with a clear heart, without the weight of tradition bearing down on them. I agree to this ritual, Kai said firmly, feeling a sense of relief wash over him. If it offers us a way to make this choice with respect, then I will take part. Sailor nodded, her calm returning as she met the elder's gaze. I too accept. This is a path we can walk together, with honesty and clarity. Arthur's face softened with approval. Very well. The ritual will take place under the next twin moons. Until then, prepare yourselves, for this choice is not one to be taken lightly. Preparing for the union's choice. The days leading up to the ritual were filled with an intensity that weighed on both Kai and Sailor. For Kai, it was an opportunity to understand what this bond truly meant to him, to discern whether it was more than a mere obligation, whether his connection to Sailor was something he wanted to deepen or release. He spent hours contemplating his feelings, trying to unravel the threads of loyalty, respect, and, perhaps, affection that had formed between them. Sailor, on the other hand, retreated into a quiet solitude, meditating and seeking guidance from her people's ancient texts. The union's choice was a solemn rite, one that required the participants to look within themselves and confront their deepest fears and desires. For her, the ritual held a weight that was both personal and spiritual. As the night of the twin moons approached, Kai and Sailor met one evening, their mutual silence speaking volumes. Finally, Sailor broke the stillness. Kai, she began, her voice soft but steady, this bond has tested us in ways neither of us expected, but through it, I have come to see you as more than just a partner in this endeavor. You are someone I respect deeply, and someone I have come to care for. Kai felt his chest tighten at her words, an emotion he hadn't anticipated stirring within him. Sailor, I feel the same. This bond, it's changed me, made me see beyond my own world, beyond my own understanding, and I don't want to lose that. But I don't want to make this choice because of obligation either. I want it to be real, to be something we both believe in. She nodded, her gaze intense. Then let us enter this ritual with honesty, and let whatever decision we make be one that honors us both. The ritual of union's choice. Under the light of Taurius twin moons, Kai and Sailor stood at the heart of the Zithrian ceremonial grounds. The elders surrounded them, chanting softly in an ancient Zithrian dialect that resonated with a haunting beauty. The air was thick with anticipation, the distant sounds of night creatures mingling with the ritual's solemn cadence. The head elder stepped forward, holding a bowl filled with a glowing liquid that shimmered like stardust. He spoke, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of tradition. Kai Legrand, sailor of the Zithrians, he intoned, you stand here as partners bound by fate yet free by choice. In this ritual, you shall drink from the bowl of clarity. Let it reveal to you the truth of your hearts and guide you in your decision. Sailor stepped forward first, taking a small sip from the bowl, her eyes closing as she felt the effects of the liquid course through her. Kai followed suit, tasting the strange, sweet essence that filled him with a sense of calm, of focus. He felt his mind clear, his thoughts sharpening as if he could see every choice and consequence laid out before him. The elder continued, in this moment of clarity, look within. Speak now of your intent, and let your words guide your path. Sailor's voice was the first to break the silence. I have found honor and friendship in this bond, she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. Kai, you have shown me that understanding can bridge any divide. I do not wish to abandon this bond. I choose to honor it, if you are willing. Kai's heart pounded, every fiber of his being resonating with her words. He felt the truth of his own emotions crystallize, the bond with Sailor no longer a duty, but something he wanted, something he chose. I feel the same, Sailor, he said, his voice thick with emotion. This bond has become more than I ever imagined. I don't want to let it go. I want to keep walking this path with you. The elder raised his hands, and the chanting grew louder, a wave of approval radiating through the Zithrian crowd. Then let it be known that this union is chosen, not bound by obligation but by the purity of intent. As the ritual concluded, Kai and Sailor stood side by side, their bond solidified not by fate or duty, but by a choice they had made together. Under the light of the twin moons, they felt a peace that was deeper than any tradition or ceremony, a quiet understanding that their journey was just beginning.